Hello again. This is Grace Suva, and I'd like to formally welcome you to the Best Practice Champions and Knowledge Exchange. We're going to have a great hour today, but just wanted to introduce myself again. My name is Grace Suva, and I'm one of the managers on the Implementation Science team here at RNAO in the BPG program, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's webinar. This is one of a monthly webinar series, and it's a means of supporting RNAO's best practice champions in their work in guideline implementation. And all of our speakers, both today and in future, are actively involved in BPG implementation. So today, we will be focusing on strategies for champions leading change in long-term care. And before we get started, just want to give you some housekeeping items to keep in mind. First off, we want our webinars to be interactive and engaging. So we encourage you to type in the chat box any questions that you may have. So we'll allow the presenter to present on her presentation for about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll field the questions for about 10-15 minutes, depending on our time with regard to her presentation. We have started to record these presentations so that they are archived for future viewing, and we also will have Danielle's presentation available on the website after the webinar. So, it sounds like all of you are on board and listening and have access to WebEx, so that is excellent. If you have any technical difficulties during the time, just let us know. And I'd like to introduce you also to Andrea Stubbs. She is the project lead, project coordinator for the Best Practice Champions program. So she will be handling the logistics behind the scenes. If you have any questions, please forward them to her. I've introduced myself, and I'd like you to introduce to you now Danielle Charbonneau, and she is the presenter for today. So she is an RPN who has been working at the Perley Rideau since August in 2016, and she graduated from the RPN program in May 2016 and is currently in the bridging program to become an RN. She has a part-time position on the Dimension unit and has worked on all units across the 450-bed home during her time at the Perley Rideau. And Danielle has worked on a variety of quality improvement teams and projects, including bed entrapment, comfort care rounding, wound care, skin and wound team, medication management, UTI program, and frailty-informed care. She became a BPSO champion in February 2017 and attended the Foundational Summer Institute last year and took over the role as a BPSO Liaison in January 2018. And while she is new to this role, she's very passionate about advocating for evidence-based practice and creating an evidence-informed culture at her facility. So for those individuals who do not know what BPSO is, it stands for Best Practice Spotlight Organization, and organizations do enter into a contractual agreement with RNAO to implement about 3 to 5 guidelines over the 3 years with coaching and education and support from RNAO. So Danielle is one of the BPSO leads or champion leads at her organization. So I'd now like to turn the presentation over to her to share her expertise and her experiences. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace, and hi, everyone. I'm Danielle. So I'll just remind you, since the slide's up, that if you want to ask a question, just click on the hand or just send a chat through the chat box, and I'll stop and answer you. We'll just go. Oops, sorry. Okay, so you pretty much said it all. I've been at RPN for a couple of years. I'm still in the program bridging to become an RN, but as of right now, I've been doing BPSO for about 1 day a week. We're in the 3rd year of the program, so this final year is mostly focused on sustainability, and just trying to engage our champions has been one of our biggest goals and projects right now. So I'll just give you a little bit of an overview about the program, or about the Perley. So we're a pretty large facility. I think we're the 2nd largest home, long-term care home in Ontario. We have about 450 beds, over 800 staff, and over 400 volunteers. Currently have over 100 champions. And we're a bit more than just a long-term care home. We actually have a bit of a seniors village, so lots of on-site services. We also have assisted living just next door. So some of the programs that we offer, we've got 250 veteran beds, 160 community, 34 convalescent. The list goes on. You can take a look. We've also recently opened 2 brand new units, one subacute for the frail elderly to sort of support frail elderly in convalescing so they don't have to do it in hospital. And since one of our goals is to become a center of excellence in frailty-informed care, this is something that we're very passionate about. So that's a brand new unit doing very well. And we also just opened a new specialized behavioral support unit in partnership with our Royal Ottawa Mental Health Hospital, which is the unit that I actually work on right now. So just moving along, I just want to get a bit of an idea of where everyone else is from. So if you want to just type in the chat box what type of facility you are in and what your role is. And just go ahead and type it. I see someone asked if we could increase the volume. Are you able to hear me a bit better? Is this better? Okay, lots of long-term care. Acute care, awesome. And different leaders as well, BPSO leads. Okay, great. Awesome. So it's good to see that there's different, there's both long-term care and acute care, and most of you seem to be in leadership roles. So since I've been both a champion on the front line and I've recently taken over more of a leadership role in the program, I have gauged this presentation about how to engage champions from a leadership perspective, but also how you as a champion can take sort of more initiative and get involved on your own. So some of the objectives that we'll go through are how to engage champions to both participate in the training, but also as well as being more engaged and involved after the training. We'll go through how to identify your role as a champion and sort of what this means in relation to guideline implementation. We'll also go through the knowledge to action framework and just sort of understand the different ways to get involved at each step, but also use the framework to help you sort of figure out how to get more involved. We'll go through different ways to be more involved, how to utilize your supports, and then we'll talk about some examples of success at our facility. So this is a photo of one of our residents and one of our recreation therapists. So when we first started this program, we had a lot of staff really passionate about wanting to become a champion, since we all had the same sort of goal of wanting to provide the best possible care for our residents. So that really took off near the beginning. Now that we're in year 3, we've noticed a bit of a challenge. So we have tons of champions, but really how many of those champions are engaged and participating to the full potential? So this has been a bit of a challenge. Like I said, we put out an engagement survey last year which asked staff some questions about how satisfied they were with the program. And we weren't too surprised to see that a lot of the results came back with staff saying that they weren't very satisfied with their level of participation and engagement in the program, and they wanted to be more involved. So this sort of made us realize what our current system was and how it wasn't working, and we needed a new plan moving forward. That being said, we needed to really learn how to leverage the talents and training that they bring to the table, so we wanted to develop a clear plan that would empower our champions and use the skills that they'd learned. So we're a pretty large facility, and this is a very big resource to the program that was being underutilized. So we knew now that we needed some new strategies for engaging our champions moving forward. So we started to develop a process. Our 3 main areas of focus where we wanted to engage and orient new champions. We wanted ongoing engagement and sustainability, and we needed to increase the effectiveness of the communication between champions. So we held something called a World Café, which was a workshop sort of style session or meeting where we brainstormed strategies for overcoming these barriers. So we got a bunch of champions in the room, and somebody actually recently at the Summer Institute said this. I think they were from Sunnybrook, but they said if you tell them what to do, they're going to hate it. So you kind of have to let them decide what sort of things would work best for them, and so this was the perfect opportunity to let them have a voice. So our 3 main questions were focused on those areas that I spoke about before. So we asked them these questions specifically: what strategies can be used? for oriented engaging, strategies to continue engaging champions in BPSO work, and how do we promote communication between champions. So the groups were, the champions were split into 3 groups, and they were all given one of these questions to start with. They had a period of time to work on the questions and put their answers down before they were switched into different groups with different questions, and they would add on to the answers that the last group had written. So from that, these were the actual answers that they came up with. So for the first one, strategies to be used for orienting and engaging new best practice champions, they wanted to highlight what is best practice for applicable teams, so sort of identifying what areas we should be focusing on for which BPG teams. They wanted to choose a team after the training which they could be affiliated with. They wanted to be used for work across the home. They wanted a better process for new staff and to utilize their areas of interest. Different ideas came from that one. And I'll talk a bit about how we use these later on in the presentation. For the second one, they came up with for engaging champions in their BPSO work and ensuring accountability. They wanted a list of expectations after the training to kind of hold some accountability. They wanted to have calls out for champions for different work, sort of celebrate the champions in the BUB. The BUB is our Between Us Briefly. It's our monthly newsletter for the facility. So kind of just recognizing that the work they did and celebrating that. Dedicated time for BBG work was a huge one. And just sort of things like that. And then for promoting BPSO communication, they wanted to find out who the champions were, have photos, buttons, newsletters, an info folder, which we could sort of taken the same idea, but it became more of a physical board in our Perley facility, which we'll talk a bit about later as well. Champions of the month, sharing champions that have access to the champion network and RNAO. And some fact sheets. So just different ideas from everybody, which really got the ball rolling on some engagement strategies that we used moving forward. So from that, we then knew that we needed to increase facility awareness. Being such a large facility, it can be really difficult to spread things throughout all the units and have it stick. We knew we needed a clear plan for champions after the training to engage them right away. We wanted to improve communication between champions and BPG teams. Not everyone has an email address at our facility. It's usually just, so PSWs don't. Pretty well everyone else does. So it can be kind of tricky to stay on the same page, especially as the champion numbers go up. So we needed a better communication plan. We really wanted to leverage our champions by working to their skills and interests. Using this approach has been huge so far because it really has piqued their interest and has sustained their engagement so far. And then we wanted to make sure that we were putting emphasis on celebrating our successes as well. So starting with our awareness plan, this is the first kind of step we took. So this is the plan we made for the year. So every month we've been implementing a different strategy for increasing awareness at our facility and sort of creating more of a BPSO presence. One thing I'll start with, so the awareness survey is what we implemented right at the get-go. We're also going to implement it at the end. We just wanted to sort of use this as a measure for how these strategies sort of worked. So we put these surveys out on the units for people without email addresses as well as residents and families, volunteers, but we also sent it out through email via SurveyMonkey. Lots of staff had a lot of knowledge about the program, but a lot of families and residents didn't, and they really wanted to know more. Following that, I walked around, I did walk and talks on all shifts, so days, evenings, and nights. This was extremely successful. It was really surprising to find a lot of staff didn't know, but they were really willing to listen. We actually have, I'm not sure if it's called something similar in other facilities, but we have building support officers, so BSO. So whenever I said, oh, do you know what BPSO is? They'd be like, oh yeah, the maintenance guys. And so it was interesting to see that not a lot of people really knew as much as they thought about the program. So being able to actually talk to them face-to-face and answer their questions was really successful. And from this, we actually had a lot of staff interested in completing the training independently, and we had a lot of success with our e-learning trainings because of that, that the RNAO offers online with the modules. So in May, we did our BPSO Champion and Nursing Week celebration, where our CEO, Director of Nursing, BPSO coach, myself spoke at, and myself had spoken at, and we had coffee and snacks, and we all just sort of had a chance to talk and celebrate our successes, and there was a photographer. I'll show you some pictures afterwards. So that was really nice just to be able to sort of celebrate some of our successes over the past couple of years, and everyone said some kind words about how proud we were to have this sort of program being implemented. And then this summer, we have our BPG Team Awareness Month. So right now we're doing pain. Next month is going to be 3Ds. We're also implementing falls and pressure injuries, which will be showcased in the following months. But I've left it up sort of to the BPG team leads and their teams to sort of come up with what their strategies will be, but I've helped them implement them. So right now, Pain is also doing some walk and talks. They've got some posters and pamphlets being put out across the units. I know in July, the 3Ds team has some fun activities with some games and prizes planned just to sort of get the conversation going about these teams and sort of why we're doing this and the reasoning behind it. And then following that, we're planning on doing a BPSO video. We have a couple of other ideas for the rest of the year, and then at the end of the year in March, we'll put out the awareness survey again to see how it worked. So this was the awareness survey that we used. It was just very simple. This is the one that was put out on the units as well as to staff. So it just asks you to say who you are, whether or not you knew what BPSO stands for. Sorry, I'll just stop really quickly. The information in your pain pamphlets, it's for everyone. So it's directed towards staff, residents, volunteers. It's just mostly, it talks about, actually I might have an example of it. At the end, I think, that it basically talks about signs to look for, what grimacing might mean, what guarding might mean, things that are good non-pharmacological interventions for managing pain, stuff like that, that our pain team and champions came up with. And if there's anything that anybody wants to see, just you can send me an email afterwards, and I can see what resources we can help you guys out with. So yeah, so our awareness survey just sort of up on the screen just sort of briefly asks sort of what people know about the program. It was a very simple survey just to see what the current awareness already was. These are the information guides that I used. So I just sort of made a double-sided sheet with all the basic information about the program, our champions, our BPGs, and sort of where we are as a facility right now. So I went around on all shifts and handed these out, and with some chocolates, and just talked about the program with people. This was our Nursing Week celebration, so we had a bunch of people come. They were able to come on their breaks and have some coffee and then go back to the unit, or they were able to just talk with the CEO, talk with the managers, talk with the different BPG teams, and they would come and go as they pleased. And it was actually a really nice celebration, and a lot of champions have said they felt really valued because of it, so that was really nice. So moving forward from that, we wanted to create an engagement plan that was a little bit more clear than what we already have. So the first thing that we created was a post-training survey. So this has actually been huge in a huge part of our engagement plan. We now give this to staff once they complete their training in order to understand what their interests are. So it asks you questions. I have it again in the presentation I'll show you, but it basically just asks what teams that they're interested in being involved in, either as an active participant or an affiliate member to a team. And then it asks them what sorts of projects and skills that they would like to be included in. Based on these surveys, I then created a giant skills and interest file, which all BPG leads have access to. This helps the teams to decide which champions they should be reaching out to for certain projects or tasks that they want to help implement. This prevents a lot of burnout from using the same champions for the same activities every single time. And it's been really good for being able to find the right champion for the right task. So then to improve communication, we developed champion resource teams, which I think we also copied from Sunnybrook. I'm so sorry, Sunnybrook. Thank you. You have wonderful ideas. So basically what that is like I said, not everybody has email addresses, but moving forward, we have PSWs. Every PSW that's trained as a champion receives an email address. And then all champions trained are, based on their post-training survey, which team they decide they're interested in. It could be 1, 2, or all 4. They're then added to distribution lists as sort of an affiliate team member. So you can have a 3Ds champion resource team or a Falls champion resource team. And then what happens with these teams is following their BPG meetings, they will send their meeting minutes or updates to everyone on the team, but they'll also send it to their resource team so people can receive updates about what's going on and what they should be sharing information about on the units. as well as opportunities for further involvement. So they can email this resource team for pretty much anything, but also just to keep them updated and keep the conversation going about whatever they're trying to implement. And then we're trying to create a toolkit following the training as well. It's just in the midst of being made right now, but it'll have some words from upper management myself and CEO. It'll talk a bit about the program and how it works at the Perley, what your role is and what is expected of a champion. And then we want to have some sort of activities that we've been talking about between a couple right now, but that just sort of applies what you're learning right away, just to kind of give you a quick, small task just to sort of get you involved and use that inspiration that you have following training right away. And then the e-learning, we've also created since we had so much success with the e-learning, I just created a short one-pager explaining how to sign on and do the e-learning modules, just sort of instructions for doing it, so that if anyone wants to go ahead and do it, they have sort of a cheat sheet for just going ahead and doing it nice and quickly. So this is the post-training survey that we administer to all staff following the training. So it just asks you to choose a team to be affiliated to. We also just included raising awareness for best practice, just at least for this year, just since that's something we're working on as well. Lots of people like to be a part of the BPG Awareness Month, so we have some champions going around and handing out quizzes and that sort of thing as well, if that's what they're interested in. And then some of the ways they'd like to be involved at the bottom. So again, they can choose as many as they like, but this just helps us to understand, okay, maybe they just like sharing information, or maybe they want to be as involved as possible. It really does range, and we want to make sure we're working to their interests and skills. So again, just communicating, that seems to be huge. And so the champion resource teams has been really helpful. Teams have actually been able to find champions that, let's say they needed somebody to collect data for their team, they can see it on the giant Excel sheets that so-and-so is interested in doing that, and they just send them an email, and we've had people be chosen for certain projects for that. We have monthly Bob articles, so again, our newsletter. Some people are mentioned in these depending on what the focus is that sort of time. We just implemented a new communication board in our Perley Center, so it's at the heart of our facility. It's a giant board that just says BPSO Communication Board, where we keep current news about so we have our leadership reports from all the teams, which just shows like balls going down or sort of that sort of data. Current news, we have our BPSO newsletter where we are featured in for comfort care rounding. And then we have some info about the program, as well as a hot file next to it where people can grab resources such as the pain pamphlet or the e-learning instructions or the BPSO info guide. And this has been really helpful as well. Lots of people have given some really great feedback about that. And then we also have our web page where our articles are featured as well. So this is just a photo of our BPSO communication board. And like I said, just to the right of that, we have a little folder where we keep all of the handouts for everyone. And this is our webpage. So just on the left there, we have a couple of our Nursing Week videos. If you guys ever want to go and take a look, they're really well done. We had our professional media guy put them together. So one of them is a celebration for Nursing Week where a bunch of our staff are saying thank you. And then the other one, you can sort of see it at the bottom, but she is one of our family advisors who is featured in the video, but along with other staff where we talk about our BPSO thank yous and such. And then, okay, so I know everyone recognizes this framework, and I'm not going to go into detail in the sense of BPG implementation, but this framework is actually very useful for taking what you've learned from the training and also just applying it to to how you can be involved in the program and be more involved as a champion. So I'll talk more about each step. So that first one, identify. So in BPG, when we're using this for BPG implementation, we're trying to identify the problem, but whenever we're talking about it in terms of champion engagement, it's really important, I find, to first identify your areas of interest and your role. So a common issue that we were having for staff was following training, people were sort of like, well, what now? I'm a champion, now what I do? Like a little bit lost. So we just want to encourage people to just sort of ask some questions like, what do I care about? What are my goals? what sort of influence do I have in the role that I hold? This is super important because we have a lot of people, like maintenance, food and nutrition, we've had a lot of feedback of people saying, like, this is nursing, this is very nursing related, I can't do this, I'm not a nurse. And we want to remind people that your perspectives are extremely valuable. You might see something that another person in another discipline doesn't, and we just want people to understand the value that they hold in the role that they are in. We also want people to really understand what sort of BPGs that they're interested in. It might not be something that we're implementing, but maybe there's something that you can bring to one of the teams that can be a future task or project. Or even identify what BPGs that are available that are relevant to my goals. What are we already doing that I can be involved in? What am I passionate about that I would love to be a part of? Identify the current teams and initiatives that are already in place at your facility and see how you can get involved and just sort of take that initiative. So then taking it sort of overlaps, but reflecting on your own practice and identifying, are there any gaps in my practice based on what I've learned? Do I notice any gaps in the facility's practice? Has other teams already recognized this, or is there a way that I can reach out to someone and sort of point that out because it's been missed? There's so many people that you can reach out to, so sort of adapting that knowledge and reaching out to your colleagues or your manager. BPG leads, are there other people that feel the same, talking to a colleague and seeing sort of, okay, how did you get involved? Is there a way that you found this was really easy to sort of take initiative and do something different that you felt inspired to do? Are there supports available to help you? And I know I'm going to sound like a broken record because everyone says this, but use your toolkit because it is super helpful and there's a lot of really great resources in there. So, yeah. And then sort of consider the evidence and the benefits to support you in your goals and to advocate for your practice change. So just maybe reading an entire BPG or reading the toolkit isn't something that you want to do, but maybe understanding the benefits and being able to talk about that with your colleagues just to help support that. That's another huge thing, even like just advocating for what you believe in and why this is important, even if that's like the only thing you do, that's super helpful as well. Really maximize your resources. So like I said, use the toolkit, using the framework. RNAO has incredible resources online. Their webinars are very helpful, and their champion network as well. Resources at your facility are also extremely helpful. There's always like a quality improvement team or other colleagues that are passionate about providing the same best care that you can talk to and kind of team up with. Maybe there aren't teams that exist right now. Maybe you can form one. One thing that I really appreciate about this program is that it gives you the tools and strategies to take that initiative and gives you the inspiration to kind of push you forward in doing it on your own. So using that to either get involved in something that already exists or creating something that you would love to be a part of or even lead, that's extremely valuable. Yeah. So yeah, look at the different strategies being used in your facility. So like I said before, there might not already be things in place, but maybe you see something that would work because of where you work. Maybe it doesn't work where you work because nobody is in your role on that team currently, and maybe you can get involved and say that maybe this strategy would work better based on my perspective in this different area. Identify some of the strategies being used at your facilities and see if there's need for improvement on these. Are there areas to be involved in these projects? Yeah, so what I was saying before is sort of just being an advocate for this. Okay. Sorry, just understanding the change process too. So understanding that there's more likely to be a lot of people resisting the change because right away whenever something has to change, you'll see that pushback right away. So understanding that that's sort of the way things are going to happen, but being that person that wants to change that train of events and understanding that this change is for the better and advocating for that change bettering things and being that facilitator to that change, I guess is the word that I'm looking for, and having a positive attitude, even if that's the only thing that you can do, encouraging other champions to do the same and just sort of easing that process and providing the feedback to teams to make it a bit of a smoother change is extremely important. And even, like I said, even if it's the only thing you do, that's being a champion. So assisting in those implementation projects and participating in any way that you can is really helpful. Sorry, it's a bit frozen right now. Okay, so monitoring knowledge use and evaluating outcomes. So like I said before, no matter what role that you're in, bring a very valuable perspective to the team. And even if you're in sort of the same role as like a sort of leadership role or anything like that, talking to people and getting the different feedback from different perspectives can be very valuable. Asking those questions, why isn't this working? How can I make this better for you? What would make it easier? Like I said before, if you tell them what to do, they're going to hate it. You sort of need to get down to the root cause and ask them what would make this better for you and how would you like to be involved. Encouraging people to understand what's happening and to request resources to help themselves understand if they need it. Being able to reflect on what they don't want this change or why they are having a hard time being involved is really important, in asking them how they'd like to be involved and giving them those sort of opportunities. And then just talking to your peers, observing and providing feedback to the teams is another huge way of just being involved as well. Like I said, if advocating is the only thing that you can do, at least that's being a champion as well. And then just sustaining, so staying informed about the BPGs, about what's going on, the different implementation strategies, sort of where you're at. Maybe there's a common way of sharing that communication, like our communication board or our emails. Being able to stay informed and collaborate with other colleagues and participate in this knowledge sharing is work of a champion on its own. You don't need to be leading an entire huge project just to be a champion. You don't need to be leading a team to do that. Just having everybody on board with the same common goals and understanding is creating a good champion network on its own and helping to facilitate that change. And being open and adapting to change is huge as well. And just making sure that you as a champion understand that it's important to continually revisit these stages, and that maybe you need to re-identify your role, and maybe you need to re-identify your goals and what your interests are, and maybe re-identify how re-identify the strategies currently being used and how you can get involved at every step of the way. It's really important as well. So different ways that we can be involved: identify your areas of interest and maybe reach out to your manager and let them know, hey, this is what I'm interested in. Is there anything going on that I can be involved in this sense? Reaching out to the resources that you have, even just reading the BPGs. I don't know how many people actually go home and read the BPGs or any BPG after their training. I did, only because I'm a little bit of a keener, but I feel like a lot of people don't. Or maybe there's a way that you can make like a little Sparks Note version for your facility, like a little cheat sheet or fact sheet about the BPGs that you want to implement, just to sort of get people understanding why it's important that we're making these changes, and that way you can help create that sort of facilitator to change by having people understand why we're doing this. That on its own is the role of a champion as well. Being familiar with the facility initiatives, like I said, talking to a friend, and providing feedback and promoting is, if nothing else, the best thing that you can do. This arrow doesn't like me. So I actually stole this little slide from the RNAO, but it basically just summarizes what it means to be a champion. I liked it because it identifies the champion as a leader, which is something I really value about this program. We're creating a network of leaders around the world, which I think is truly amazing. Whenever I completed the champion training last year, as well as both summer institutes, I always left with this feeling of just inspiration. Like, I can change so many things, and I can lead these things, and I was excited to just be a part of it. So I felt like I was being given the tools and supports to lead change, and I think that's such an incredible opportunity. So really leveraging those talents and skills and using that inspiration right from the get-go is huge, whether you're the manager leading the change or if you're the champion that feels that way afterwards. Just running with that right away is really important. And just understanding that in whatever way that you choose to go, in whatever stage of the framework you choose to be involved in, you're being a leader in the way that you want to, and recognizing that you have the power to be a successful champion. So these are just some examples of champion work at our facility. So like I said, we have a couple of champions collecting data for BPG teams. They were selected through our resource file, the skills and interest file for the BPG team leads. We have articles that we have in the facility newsletter. So we had a couple of champions write their articles as well. So we had like a not just nursing sort of theme. So we had someone from food and nutrition write something. We had somebody from recreation and therapeutic arts write something about how they're involved as a champion. We have champions involved in comfort care rounding and other training videos that we do. So things like the pain pamphlet, we had champions create with families and residents. They assist in different promotional activities and videos, such as the ones I mentioned are on our website. And we have active and affiliate members, so the distribution list resource teams, and also champions that sit on our actual BPG teams, which they're covered on the units to attend. We also have wound audits and hand hygiene audits, so we'll have champions that go around and audit hand washing. I myself am one of the champions that complete wound audits 1 day a week. And we have individual projects as well. So, for example, we had a PSW champion who sits on our pressure injuries team, or sorry, our steering committee team, and he approached the pharmacist and asked, is there any way that we as PSWs can understand what side effects to expect from our residents being on certain medications so that we know whether they're more prone for falls or need to be toileted more and so on. And so they worked together and they actually created a medication cheat sheet for staff to help understand these sort of side effects. And it was actually very successful, so that was sort of an independent project where he sort of saw, this is a problem that I'm interested in. He reached out to his resources and said, how do we make this? They looked at different strategies. They went through all those steps of the framework unintentionally, but it does work, and created this for staff, and it was really effective, so that was really cool. So this is just one of the resources that was created by some of the champions with residents and families. So this is a fall prevention poster that was put in residents' rooms with their permission, and bathrooms and stuff, just to sort of give them an idea of what they should be looking for and how to stay safe if you're at risk for falls. This is the pain pamphlet that I mentioned earlier that we're giving out during our pain awareness month, but this is actually our residents and one of the managers on the pamphlet who worked with us to sort of give some examples of what it looks like if you can't explain that you have pain and instead show. So that's another example. This is another one where, again, it's our residents and our staff that was created by champions and family advisors and residents as well. This is one of the not just for nursing articles that I was talking about. So this one was written by our food and nutrition supervisor, and she just talks about what it meant for her to be a champion coming from a different perspective that wasn't from nursing. And then we have another one, again, from our recreation therapist. So if anybody wants to read these, I think they'll be, the presentation will be archived. And again, just our webpage. So these were the Nursing Week promotional videos that we created with our media team. And then this is just a little quote that I thought was really nice. If you're walking down the right path and you're willing to keep walking, eventually you'll make progress. So that just sort of summarizes how I felt that even if the only thing you do today is something that you consider to be very small, even if it's just convincing somebody that this change is worth it, that's being a champion on its own. Thank you.
Great, thanks Danielle for that excellent presentation. I mean, I must say I really like a lot of the main messages that you projected in your presentation, the importance of strategic planning, engaging your stakeholders and assessing their needs in terms of how to meaningfully engage with their champions. So thinking outside the box, and a lot of creative strategies that champions have used to be able to be engaged, and that there is a role for everyone, and it's not just nurses, it's also the other healthcare providers, you know, the interprofessional team. So I really like that. And thanks so much for outlining again the knowledge action framework, and that, you know, champions can be involved at every stage of the planning, implementation, as well as the evaluation process. So excellent. Thank you so much. Let's see. I'm going to now open up the line for some questions. So I'm just going to look at the chat box to see if we have any, and Danielle, just let me know if you see any as well.
There is a question online asking about know more about the toolkit.
So the toolkit that we're working on creating right now is actually still in a draft process. I believe I already said this, but we sort of got the idea from Sunnybrook, where they just sort of outlined, they had some words from their upper management team about why the program was important and why it was sort of part of their goals. A bit about the program, and then they have different, they have a bit of a different structure, but just sort of how to engage, they had sort of some questions in engaging their champions right after the training. Ours will be a little bit, it'll be similar, but a little bit different because our structure isn't set up the same as theirs. I believe they have sort of like a sub-training, but it'll basically just have, I actually would like to take them through the same framework and asking them to identify their areas of interest and identify some way that they can be involved and sort of get their wheel turning in their brain about how to apply what they've learned to our facility specifically. And so we kind of want to include that sort of framework, I guess, into our toolkit.
And then we also have a question about asking for your email address.
I'll send the slides, yeah. When I send the slides to everyone after the presentation, her email address will be at the end slide.
Perfect. Do you see any questions there, Grace?
If there was an earlier comment about loving the sticker idea at the beginning of your presentation. Just wasn't sure, Danielle, if you wanted to expand on that?
Yeah, so some of these ideas, since we've just recently made the plan a few months ago, we haven't actually had a chance to implement all of them, but
yeah,
the idea, we were thinking about doing it more of a button form because a lot of our staff seem to just love buttons. I feel like we can get anything if we give them a button. So yeah, we really want to do something similar to that. A lot of staff are really interested in that, but if and when we do implement that, I can share it with you guys somehow.
Okay, that would be great. I'm realizing that there is a long-term care as well as acute care on the line. Or are there any sort of any other messages aside from perhaps what I've summarized, you know, in terms of transferable strategies and, you know, tips to give to people?
The best thing I can say, honestly, is just to ask them. Like I said, coming from both frontline and then moving into this sort of leadership role, I very much value when people ask me as a frontline staff what I feel like would be effective. And again, from unit to unit, it can vary, and your interests and what's important to you would be very different. So getting to the source of I guess, the issue and asking them what would work for them, what's deterring you from not doing this training or making you not want to be more involved, and just sort of figuring out where they are. I think that's been incredibly beneficial for us, at least.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Thank you. I do see a few more questions, at least that were presented to myself here on the chat. There's a question about if, as a champion, if you have an idea, how do you know who to talk to first? How to get the ball rolling in terms of making something a reality? Yeah. So so you could either go right to the source if that's what you are aware of. So for me, I would probably go straight to the VBG leads just because that's what I know about. But yeah, let's say you're new to the facility, you don't really know how things work. I honestly always tell people, even if you're not sure, just start a conversation with anybody, because you might end up talking to someone who has the same interest in you, or
know someone who knows someone, and sometimes just starting that initial conversation is just all you need. But also continuing it, don't just stop at that first person. Maybe they don't agree with you, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. I think you should just keep talking to people until you get where you need to be, and eventually you will get there.
Okay, awesome. You know, as you were saying in your presentation, you know, communication is key, and you know, best ideas come from frontline, given that they're living the experience every day. So, no, that's great to be persistent and to communicate. Okay. Let's see here. Another question about how has your plan impacted awareness at your facility?
I think it's been really good so far. The biggest thing that has made the biggest difference, I would say, was the walk-in talks. I think people felt a lot more valued having someone come and speak to them face-to-face. It showed that we had the time to answer the questions they had to ask and give them the chance to understand it. But I've definitely seen awareness increase since this plan has been implemented, especially with our BPSO communication board and the info guides as well. Lots of people have had a lot of interest in the training because of their awareness. We've also included it in our orientation packages, so lots of staff have chosen to complete the e-learning just because they learned about it in orientation, which has been really nice. And we also include in our job descriptions. So even if they don't, it's a preferred qualification for some of our postings. So if they see that, then they're more likely to participate in the training because of that. And a lot more people are interested in doing it and reaching out to me than previous. So.
Oh, awesome. So positive, a very positive, outcome from this. Okay, that's great. Okay, so there is one last question I see here. If you were to start this plan today, what would you do differently? Because it did sound like, you know, there was initial rollout and then there was a need to reassess and re-engage. So any sort of tips in that?
Yeah, I think I would have made the engagement plan a bit earlier, especially since we've had so many staff complete the e-learning and we did the workshop just recently. It wasn't totally implemented in time for that, but having our engagement strategy, like our post-training survey and our tools and such, having that ready earlier on so that we could engage them right from the get-go. Because like I was saying, sometimes, from what I've heard, everyone's very inspired and wants to be involved right after the training, but that sort of dissipates as time goes on. And so having that plan in place right from the get-go would have been a lot more beneficial. And then maybe making our follow-up, like our surveys and such, online somehow, virtual, because it has been pretty difficult following up with staff individually. But other than that, it's still, they're good ideas, but it just needs a bit of finessing, and maybe for just implementing it sooner would have been a bit more effective.
Okay. Okay, and that's the beauty of planning, is that you know you make those refinements as you go along, because no one plan is static, and you know, in order to keep on attending to people's needs and their questions and inquiries and wanting to engage, you sort of adjust accordingly. But I agree with having, like, you know, some sort of strategic plan, because after you're trained, it's like, okay, now what type of thing.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. Just out of curiosity, how many champions do you have now?
I actually was just in the middle of updating the file, but it's over 110, I think, just over.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And how large is your facility again?
We have over 800 staff.
100 is great. And then there's the spread, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, I'm just going to check. Anyone else on the line? Any other questions that you have? I'll just pause here for about 15 seconds or so to see if there's anything else that pops up. And thank you, Danielle, for sharing your experience and expertise. It's I mean, it's one thing to do the education and training on how to implement evidence into practice, but it's the stories and the real life examples, I think, that help to bring that theory into reality. And having, you know, examples from, you know, different organizations such as yourself has been so helpful. So thank you.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I don't see any questions. So unless, Danielle, did you want any closing comments or anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think that's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so if no one has any other questions, I'm just going to close up the webinar for today. Just like to thank everyone for attending and hope that you found Danielle's presentation really helpful, both as yourself as perhaps a champion or a lead, a person who is interested in transferring or implementing evidence into practice. And just to let you know that a copy of the presentation will be available, so Andrea will follow up with everyone just to be able to show you where it's posted online. And if you have any questions, please contact Andrea. She is the project lead, as I said, for the Champions program, and her email is astubbs or astubs@arneo.ca. And Andrea will also be sending out Danielle's contact information. So thank you, Danielle, for offering to provide that contact after this webinar, just for people who have questions after the fact, because it could be a lot of information here, right? And I'm sure there's a lot more information that you could share. So if that is all, thank you very much for attending, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.